Hey, everyone. It is your boy, Oliver V, back from an incredibly short break. But we were able to switch out real quick, and right below me, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Beyond Sadistic, aka Corey. How are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing absolutely incredible, Oliver. I am so excited that Deps was able to take down round one. Arno was able to do what has never been done before, put Tensai into the lower bracket in round one. I'm really excited. There are so many good decks here today. There is so much going on. Man, let's rock and roll. Let's go. I'm so excited for round two. I'm the worst Doomsday player ever. My piles do not make sense, but I do enjoy depth. So I'm really excited to see how this is going to go. Oliver, what are you excited for this round?
Well, this is a hard point for me, right? Because these are two of my favorite decks in Legacy. Like they are literally two decks in my stable that never come apart at this point. Where we
Right.
got Green White Depths, the lovely 2020 maker, anything I get to do with Elvish Reclaimer, just fantastic. Versus Doomsday. I mean, Doomsday is so much fun. There's nothing better than going cheese turn one Doomsday and just watching your opponent's joy drip out of their face.
Yes.
Um, this is a hard point for me. Peek behind the curtain real here. Beyond Sadistic, also a notable Green White Depths player. So we'll try to make sure we give Doomsday some love here. Um,
Maybe
but we
maybe a
also have
little.
two of our masterclass players on the Discord representing the decks that they do. I mean, when we first came in and made this Discord 2+ years ago, or Black Sky Doc was the Doomsday player, the resident
Yes.
expert on Doomsday, and just tore it up continually. I think he was one of the first players to get 4 wins in any big event and be able to make a play set without actually winning an invitational, and just absolutely took everybody's lunch money again and again and again. Took a break away. He's a student, and well, an expert student, we'll put it like that. And so it kind of
Right.
comes in and out of playing in our events, but always just runs it back with Doomsday and crushes us.
Yeah.
Of note, also a notable humans player and has next leveled many people who think they're about to play against him on Doomsday and instead goes turn one Thalia's lieutenant for
Thalia's. Yeah.
whatever that terrible one drop is out of humans. But let's talk about this Doomsday list real quick because this is pretty tight actually. So Doomsday of late has been shifting away from the old builds that were going on in the beginning of 2020, right? The like splash red with Volk in order to have like multiple blast effects on the board.
Yes.
That was really popularized by Kai Sawatori or Sawatorex on Twitch. Uh, and now they've started to shift to be like this more really dedicated turbo version where it's now very often playing 4 personal tutors in the main deck and just trying to go hard, 4 to 6 cyclers, go stripping from ideas unbound and just making your on the spot win piles more brainstorm based. But we see that Black Sky Doc's kind of going the other way with this and is shifting back towards the slower Doomsday build. He's not going into the full tempo plan, although we start to see that a little bit in the board by playing the 2 Murktide regents. But
Right.
he's playing 4 Baleful Strix. 4 Baleful Strix. And going back to that slow pile, which is incredibly interesting to me. Um, I don't I have to say, as much as I love Green White Depths, this is one of our fear matchups. It's one of those things where if you go to a 5K and you're on Green White Depths and you sit down and your opponent shows you that they're on Doomsday, you kind of expect to lose game one, and that's just the way that it goes. Tell me, as somebody who doesn't play Doomsday that often, what are your thoughts when going into this matchup on the Green White Depth side?
My opponent has the ability to be faster than me, and I have very little opportunity to be able to stop them from doing that. That is my big problem. If I sit down and my opponent turn one doomsdays me, I know that I have to be as fast as possible and sequence perfectly to be able to even have an opportunity to be able to take them down. I think that's the biggest scariest thing. They have so many answers, they have permission to be able to stop me from doing my plan, and then but at times they really don't care. They're just playing their own game of Magic over in their own corner while I'm trying to play my own game. I can be fast, but I think Doomsday can actually be faster, and that's where the problem lies.
Oh, absolutely. And you have so few cards that actually matter in the matchup, especially game one. Arn of note, this is one of the matchups that he built the deck for, right? We talked
Right.
about how he traditionally plays this green, white, red deck that is really targeting the control decks. No Mox Diamonds, going higher on land counts, more utility lands, and just trying to play this fair game rather than this fast game. But Black Sky Doc was one of the players in this top 8 for the Invitational that made him want to be going in on the Mox Diamonds, be going in on 3 main board endurances over prismatic endings, be going in with the deafening silences out of the board. And so I have to say, if there's a deck if there's a green white depths build that can beat Doomsday, this is going to be the one with the best chance. Again, also with those double torpor orbs in the sideboard, so it's gonna be many many cards that get to come in this in the game 3 situation.
Yeah,
But in terms of game 1, the cards that really matter are like Wasteland and turboing out a depths as fast as you can. You have so many
absolutely.
bad cards. Knight often just doesn't even do anything because it just isn't quick enough, and so you rely a lot more on like a single Elvish Reclaimer and a crop rotation to assemble depth and a timely Wasteland to try to blow them out, because Wasteland is your number one interactive spell against many piles. And and again in the early game as well. It turns out not having Collector Roof main board ruins half of your game plan in most green white depths plans when it comes to playing against Doomsday.
Right. And we talked you talked previously in the previous game in round 1 how Swords to Plowshares was a fairly bad card against Jeskai Control. It is a dead card in most cases against this deck game 1. So it's not, I don't even think that's going to be, that is literally exactly what I don't want to see in my hand.
No, 100%. There are some weird situations where, like, with weird setups and like weird amount of time that you sometimes with
Strix can
yeah,
block Merit Late. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but also there's these weird things where sometimes if your hand is really really messed up, or like you're under weird constraints from your opponent, sometimes you have to go to Thassa's Oracle with like some cards left in library still, and that's when swords can matter.
Right.
Normally, it never comes up and it's just a dead card, so we'll often see that being stripped out, especially since you have access to blasts in the board now, which are just like a far better replacement.
Well,
Um,
exactly. You can interact with Thassa's Oracle on the stack now instead of waiting for it to hit the battlefield.
Yeah, absolutely. Arn will be on the play, which is huge. Arn's
Hmm.
first seed is absolutely massive in terms of this matchup. You don't need to worry about you getting a single land drop before your opponent gets to Doomsday on turn 2. Um, you're still heavily disadvantaged, but there's a definitely a shot for Arn to take this down. I'm not sure where we're at with mulligans at the moment. I do think Arn has mulliganed at least once. Oh, looks like he's going to 5 at the moment. Not where you want to be, but Arn
No.
knows he really has to be aggressive and cannot be taking a fair hand against Black Sky Doc, keeping a terrifying 7. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do agree. In this case, and this is going to show the weakness in just exactly how Arn has to show their game plan immediately to Black Skydock. With Arna being aggressive with mulliganing, it's telling Black Skydock that I have got a weaker hand because I have to try and go as fast as possible. I'm down. It gives Black Skydock that opportunity to maybe take a turn off and do more sculpting to be able to get a better shot at winning right away. So it's kind of twofold how bad that could be there.
Yeah, it being the open deck list always makes these really interesting, even from the Doomsday side, right? Where you get to go, all right, I only am playing around Endurance and Wasteland, and that's the only point of interaction I need to worry about. When you're looking at your 7, you don't need to worry, is my opponent on a forceful deck? You just absolutely know from the outset, these are the cards that matter and whether or not you'll be able to keep it.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. I totally agree. Interesting that the one of the biggest things that Black Sky Doc has going for them is the ability to draw just a massive amount of cards. Doomsday is absolutely built to draw cards. You talk about control decks, sculpting, you talk about their ability to see with expressive iteration. Doomsday will outdraw any deck, any day. And that's just a huge bonus that Black Sky Doc has going here.
You certainly can chain through your deck quickly. We should also talk about these Cabal therapies out of Black Sky Dock,
Hmm.
by the way, before they come up. This card that, like, for the most part, we play Thoughtseize, we play Duresses over it for the vast majority of the time in
Right.
Doomsday. But in an open deck list, when you know the cards that matter, man, does Cabal Therapy get way, way better. Oh, you have 4 Endurances post 75. It's okay. I'll just name Endurance once and get both of them out of your hand.
Exactly. Exactly. And that just goes to show Cabal Therapy is one of those pet cards that a lot of people love that have played Black for years. And it's really hard. We've always been that you'll pry the Cabal Therapies out of my cold dead hand. But when there are better cards and better options, you just have to make that switch. Otherwise, you're just losing percentage points. But in open deck list, you are 100% correct. You absolutely want to have the Cabal Therapy because you know exactly what you need to hit. And you are able to surgically target those things right out of people's hands, especially like we saw in game 1 where Arna was holding up 2 crop rotations. One Cabal Therapy can easily handle that with no problem.
Seeing a pass back after a ponder, no second, or I'm sorry, Black Sky Dock was on the play, or was on the draw. What am I talking about? No second land. We see Arn coming in with the Dark Depths, potentially threatening turn 3 depths if we have Accelerant. So, like,
Right.
if we're able to draw into Mox Diamond here now. But Black Sky Dock, now there's no bodies on the table that you need to be worrying about pressuring your life total and making it harder to Doomsday and Street Wraith multiple times.
If you're Black Sky Doc, you pondered, didn't shuffle. What is it? Do you think that Black Sky Doc saw on top of that deck that wanted that
Either
you
the
wanted to keep?
missing Dark Ritual or the missing Doomsday, potentially like Cabal therapies to be able to strip endurances is the other thing.
And
It plays a lot like Storm, where anytime that you see a Storm player be pondering and not shuffling off the draw, you know that there is one of the missing pieces that they were looking for at the very least.
right,
So
I'll
any
see, and
yeah,
I was seeing a Cabal therapy right here. I think you're 100% correct.
let's see what that Cabal therapy names. What's your guess? It's got to be endurance, right?
Either that or crop rotation, but
It
it was
was
endurance.
endurance.
Yep.
There we go. We see one going. We see an Elvish Reclaimer that is uncastable, and Knight of the Reliquary that is uncastable, and a Green Sun Zenith that is uncastable.
Yeah.
We are really looking for green source off the top here. And Black Sky Dock has the go ahead. If we have land, ritual, Doomsday, we are going for it exactly at this point.
And I don't think there's this would literally be game because there is very, very little that Arna would be able to draw off the top that would be able to stop this from happening.
Ironically, Wasteland is probably going to be a better draw than Green Source here. You don't have Green Sun X's2 for Collector Oof at the moment, which is a thing that we can do in post-board games.
There's a
So
dark
you have
red
Dark
and a
Ritual.
pedal.
If there's Brainstorm in hand, this is an immediate win at the moment because you are doomsdaying with doomsdaying with an additional mana. If you
Yep.
doomsday with one extra card in hand besides Brainstorm and additional mana is a win on the spot. Especially when you have to fear 0 interaction out of your opponent. But we'll see what he does here. Could go for a slower pile. That if he doesn't have access to that brainstorm that is able to win, if he does do that, he is definitely going to make sure he has both protection for endurance off the top or wasteland off the top, which is going to be quite doable, honestly. You already have 2 mana sources, so a wasteland is going to have a hard time. You just need to put in 1 or 2 additional mana sources. But we'll have to see what he goes for here. This is always the best part also of webcam magic, of needing to then show your opponent your deck post Doomsday, and most of the time just describing these are the cards that you do not see.
Right. And one of the things too of note, just really Black Sky Dock showing their prowess in terms of pile building, just immediately searches through a quarter of the deck and gets all the cards that they're looking for. There's the brainstorm, and I think this is going to be it.
Yeah. Of note, Black Sky Dock doesn't have the easier brainstorm pile, which involves a single consider, which you brainstorm getting consider, Lion's Eye Diamond, and a cycler. You put back whatever trash card and then consider on top. You can do Lion's Eye Diamond cycle on top. But
Right.
we're going to get to do it right here, going into another brainstorm. Yeah, this is an immediate win on the spot.
Yep. There's going to be the draw off of. Oh yeah. There it is. Okay.
Ideas Unbound, draw 3. You have 1 floating still from the Lion's Eye Diamond. We get additional mana source, and we go ahead and play out this Thassa's Oracle. Very
Man.
likely, Action Negation is the free final card.
Yeah, that was
And
fast.
that's it. That is all she wrote.
Yes. Man, and that is exactly what you don't want to see from your Doomsday opponent as a depths player. That's the speed that you literally have very, very little opportunity to even interact with. So if we go to sideboards, Oliver, you also, as a depths player, what are going to be the first few cards that you go to grab to be able to bring in here against Black Sky Dock?
This is a matchup that Arn is absolutely prepared for.
Yes.
You have 2 Deafening Silences. Deafening Silences is the card that has come out a lot of green-white depths players' lists lately, just because you run into combo matchups so infrequently now that you just kind of you take that game plan of, if this is a 70-30 matchup, I'm not going to have a lot of cards for it. If I play against it, I lose. But Arn, knowing what was potentially in this top 8, went for putting back the Deafening Silences in. You have 2 Red Blasts, which are absolutely great. You're able to either hit early counter magic or potentially hit Ideas Unbound or Thassa's Oracle. The thing with Thassa's Oracle, of course, is Cavern will be remaining in because he knows about Red Blast, so it's a little less good in that situation. But hitting Ideas Unbound or a key Thoughtseize, or a key Force, or an early cantrip is just fantastic. Collector Oof. I was talking about this in game 1, that all of a sudden Green Sun Zenith becomes a way more live card because of Collector Oof. You can go ahead and you can Green Sun for it.
Right.
and turn off Lion's Eye Diamond and Lotus Petals, which can absolutely win games. It typically works in a way that you need Wastelands along with the Collector Oof, but that's like an A plus beat combo that allows you to beat certain piles that aren't ready. Torpor Orb is nuts. Torpor Orb
Yeah.
is a card that you're absolutely going to try to protect and force in. These red blasts, if they're hitting a force, are very likely going to be blasting a force that's targeting Torpor Orb.
Yes.
Similarly, the fourth Endurance is fantastic. It's a little less good because your opponent's on Cabal Therapy, but you'll still be bringing it in. Gaddock Teague has very few things to hit. It literally hits Force of Will. I would not be bringing it in this matchup at all.
No,
Um,
I would agree with you
and
there.
Minsk and Boot, you're going to be taking that out. You have so many cards to cut. Technically, you can also be shifting into Prismatic Endings over Swords if you're not cutting those already, because that can hit an early Lotus Petal, but that's incredibly unlikely to happen. And you have a ton of cards that can come out. You can take out one. It's a Daze deck, so you can cut a Green Sun Zenith. You can cut down on Knights. You can cut down on a lot of your lands. Again, Arn has so many utility lands. He's up at 29 total, 2 more than normal. That you can be cutting 3 lands as well. So there's plenty of cards to be cutting out. On the
I do
Black Sky
agree.
Dock side, though, here, let me ask you this. We see 2 Duresses. We see
Hmm.
2 Cluster Storms. We see 3 Force Negations. We see the Chain of Vapor, 2 Mystical Disputes, 2 Ley Lines, 2 Murktides, and a single Stifle. What do you think he's going to be bringing in here?
Honestly, I don't think he's going to be going for the fast thing. I think Chain of Vapor is a good card. I think Stifle could be a good card. I don't think the Duresses, I don't think he's going to bring them in. I really don't. We know that, I'm assuming Arn is going to be going for as fast as possible to kind of counteract that, but he's also going to be able to bring those other cards in to kind of slow Black Sky Dock down. So, but he's still going to have his own game plan that he's going to enact. I don't think Black Sky Dock goes heavy into the slowdown game plan. I think he's going to try to go as fast as possible. Force of Negation would be a fantastic answer for the things that Arn is going to be bringing in. Outside of that, I don't think he brings a whole lot in.
Yeah, the issue with Force Negation isn't really a protective piece, although you are able to hit Torpor Orb with it. I still don't think it comes in. For the most part, the single Chain of Vapor is your anti-Torpor Orb plan, that you are able to put it in as the free card in piles. We saw
Hmm.
in that game, we actually just saw in that game 1, the extra quote-unquote free card that he had in the pile. A lot of times people put that in as Pact to Negation, but you can put it in as Chain of Vapor as a way to beat Torpor Orb.
Right.
Um, Similarly, I've played a lot of Doomsday, but I have really little experience of playing Murktide Regent in a sideboard transformational plan. There was that period of time where people were playing Tempo Doomsday with like 4 Malevolent Hermits and 4 Murktides in the main deck. So I'm
Right.
unsure if this is a situation where we bring in Murktides. It is potentially. I can't imagine so. We're already so favored that I think that we just run it, to be totally honest, with
Right.
the single Stifle and the single
Chain of Vapor.
Chain of Vapor coming in. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
No,
Um,
I agree. Those are your two must-have hits. Absolutely agree.
And we'll see what happens with this one, though. Arn still, it's incredibly likely that we see Arn aggressively mulliganing. He very much showed that he understood the part of this matchup where there's a lot of hands you just can't keep because of the threat that Black Sky Dock represents.
Right.
Um, Black Sky's mulliganing gets a lot harder now. Before, you had the 2 cards that you had to play around, and now all of a sudden you need to be worried about Deafening Silence in conjunction with Collector Oof, in conjunction with the Wastelands and Endurance's main board, and Torpor Orb. And it just becomes a lot harder to figure out exactly what cards you go for. However, if
Right.
you have a nuts hand that shows Doomsday on turn 2 with some protection spell, you'll be snap keeping it immediately there.
Yeah. What is the worst hand that Black Sky Doc could really be looking at?
I mean, a hand that just doesn't have pieces that matter, right? Like, it is very possible to. You got to remember, this is a deck with so many cyclers, so many discard spells, so many just like random one ofs, or like, for instance, a hand with 3 Dark Rituals and no Doomsday or Personal Tutor is a hand that you will be shipping because it's essentially already a mulligan to 5 at that point. You don't need Dark Ritual effects in multiples. A lot of lists have been starting to go up on like a single or 2 or even up to 3 Cabal therapies, basically going harder on the I'm trying to cheese Doomsday plan.
Right.
However, the worst part about what makes that harder is they're really bad in conjunction with each other, unless you're playing against specifically a Daze deck. Where Black Skydock doesn't have to worry about that really with this pile. You only have the Dark Rituals that you're going for, and using those extra spots more for these Baleful Strixes, which we'll see how these Baleful Strixes play out. This is technically a matchup where they're okay. Um,
Right. Because they are twofold. One, it can also clog up the board state, but it also allows you to draw a card as well.
yeah, they're really more of an anti-Delver card because you're forced to go slow against Delver a lot of the time.
Hmm.
And so you're able it's a speed bump for them, progresses you forward, and doesn't hinder you in the same way that it does in like this matchup in Death and Taxes, where technically speaking, your best game plan is to go fast, and Baleful Strix goes against that in this weird way, right? but it technically does still have play. So it isn't the ideal spot for it, but it isn't completely terrible. There is application for it. It isn't like your Baleful Strix against a control pile.
Right.
Arn going down to 6 and Black Sky Doc keeping the 7 again. Still absolutely terrifying.
Yeah,
Um,
I do agree. The fact that Black Sky is keeping a 7, whether it's a strong 5 that's there, a strong 4, he's also got other cards in hand that are going to be able to help Black Sky just speed through whatever game plan he's got, and more than likely could have some permission in hand as well. This is at the point as a depth player where I really need this next 6 to just be as solid as possible to be able to put some pressure on the battlefield and to be able to slow Black Sky Dock down. I need both of those things in my next 6. Otherwise, it's just getting worse and worse as we go.
yeah, when you're on Arn's side, you aren't even at this point post sideboard. You aren't even really looking for a proactive hand. You're looking at a hand that just stops Black Sky Dock from winning, right? Either like deafening silences, multiple endurances, or just honestly just these sideboard cards. You're looking for those first, and then you can progress the game plan from there. Because if you're slowing them down enough with deafening silence and torpor orb and other X spell like blast or something like that, you'll win with an Elvish Reclaimer eventually.
Right.
But it very much shifts. You even here's the question actually. You get a 6. This 6 represents turn 3 depths, but no points of interaction. Do you do it? Do you take it?
I don't. Not if my opponent kept 7. If my opponent was down on 6, I'd think about it. But honestly, and here's the interesting part, and this is where it gets really inceptualized. Did Black Sky Doc keep a weak hand of 7 just to be able to push that he had a strong 7? Just as a slower game plan, just to push Arn to mulligan more aggressively.
We're seeing Arn go down to 5.
To 5.
Interesting. Oh, this is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Corey, real quick, while we kind of have this period of time,
Yeah.
if we have anybody new in the chat who doesn't really know what the MTG Paper Legacy Discord is about and wants to kind of get in on this legacy paper action goodness, how could they do so?
You know what? You or me, if I were new, I would probably type !Discord. What that is going to do, that's going to produce a link, and I'm going to click on that link. It's going to take me to my very own personal invitation to the MTGPL, the Magic the Gathering Paper Legacy Discord, where I am gifted a huge playgroup with treasure troves of proxies available to me on the internet, so I can play Paper Legacy in the comfort of my home in my pajamas with people all over the world. I can join leagues. I get consistent games of Legacy all day long, all night long. Let's say I work third shift. It's okay. We got you covered. You guys are, if you are not part of the MTGPL, it is an absolute fantastic place for you to come and hang out. The community is absolutely top notch. It is some of the most passionate and most magic loving people that there are on the planet. And they all want to do one thing, and that's play the best format in Magic the Gathering with you over webcam.
We do a lot of similar events, actually. So just to really quickly give the really quick spiel, we do weekly events, F&M likes on Wednesday nights for NA players and Thursday nights for EU players. We do monthly leagues that are really casual. You have 3 weeks to play 6 matches against your pool, and we go on from there. We have a really active LFG channel that at any point you can go in and go at LFG and try to find an opponent. Very likely, unless you're in the middle of the day, we'll be able to find somebody there. And then we also have Saturday events, which are a little bit more of our competitive events, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And get to play some top-notch Legacy. Really, through the MTGPL, you have so many opportunities to get to flash your cardboard collection. It's just been a great outlet. For me, it was definitely one of my primary ways of making it through the COVID epidemic. But we really hope to see you there. As we have a saying, let us be your local metagame. But these players, looks like we're
Absolutely.
about having this be selected. It looks like Arn is keeping this 5 and choosing what to put back.
Which is interesting. And this is such a hard decision. I'm assuming this is probably a solid hand of Magic right here, and Arn is probably pretty pressured on what to put back. Let's hope that Arn has got a really quick game plan here that can slow Black Sky Dock down, and Black Sky kept a weak hand of cards just to try and pressure Arn into being aggressive here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the great things about these types of matchups is you know that you have the full gambit of the time. Like you are not going to be pressuring, so you really can take time to consider these micro stations that matter. Because in truth, this mulligan might be one of the most impactful things in terms of Arn's ability to try to win this game.
Right.
Caracas into deafening silence, perhaps.
That's a strong keep right there. This will absolutely force Black Sky into having to slow down immediately. Plus a Mox Diamond and pitching pitching a Savannah to that. So
And we see a beater coming in. This
okay,
Arbiter Claimer very likely in the initial turns is just going to be going through and cracking, probably turning lands into wastelands, to be totally honest. The
yeah,
great thing about Deafening Silence is that it all of a sudden makes Dark Ritual a non-functional card, and makes it so Black Sky Dock really needs to, for instance, there's no way to turn to Doomsday without the Chain of Vapor, of course.
yeah.
There's no way to turn to Doomsday while cantripping on turn one, right? The only way that you do that is with the turn one Lotus Petal. Very much this is a fantastic five. This
Oh,
we actually see
oh,
all five cards coming in right here.
yeah. This was literally the best. I think the best 5 cards that Arn could have possibly had. I think it gives him the ability to search for lands. It's got a land that you care very little about being on the battlefield because it's not going to do much for you. You've got your accelerant on a Mox Diamond, plus you have your way to slow down your Doomsday opponent.
Yeah, this is a good five to keep. I wonder what the consideration was. Potentially the lands that you're keeping was because there was putting 2 cards down and switching them out. I very much wonder what that last card happened to be.
I'd be willing to bet you're probably correct there. It was probably a lands decision. Maybe there was a fetch in there, and Arn would rather have the Caracas over the fetch.
I believe right now what they are discussing, and I was going to talk on this actually, is the interesting part of playing the Caracas instead of playing the Savannah, since Caracas is a dead card. But it looks like they are. Also, no, we totally missed it.
Yes,
There
deafening
was
silence also affects yourself as well.
there is a missequence here of Mox needs to happen first, and
Right,
then we go deafening silence. But okay, that is all right. We this is okay. It just comes down on subsequent turns.
right,
The thing is now Black Sky Dock can very comfortably, because you know the 3 other cards in hand. You know it isn't Prismatic Ending, which is the only thing that punishes you for playing out this turn one Lotus Petal. This turn one Lotus Petal is also just saying I have turn two Doomsday. I have Doomsday and second land in hand. And there's
right.
no fear of Wasteland. There is no fear of course, Wasteland doesn't do it in the name of fetch anyway.
No,
But all of a sudden you're just like, all right, you can draw exactly Prismatic Ending off the top here to blow me out of the water.
right. Played in the wrong order. Yeah, it's just a little bit of a missequence there. Doc says, by the way, it needs to be said, your beard game's on point, Corey. Thank you. I appreciate that. A few months ago, I decided to make the decision that I'm just not going to shave anymore, and this is the scruff that's going to happen. So
This is life now. Yeah, you'll
this
get to
is
see
yeah,
that a lot. Most of our commentators coming through the booth today will have some amount of facial hair. Fun. All right,
right.
we see passing the turn.
Yes,
Simon to all the cards that we had just seen before. There's one unknown in hand, and we see this Elvish Reclaimer coming down. The big thing that this has done is it has missed out on a crack towards Wasteland or a swing in for 1 damage. If this is Doomsday, the swing in for 1 damage doesn't actually do anything because this fetch will make it so Doomsday resolves and gets Black Sky Dock to 9 anyway.
right.
But it does stop Arn from being able to have on this turn gone and get Wasteland into the face of a slow pile. Oh, and we are seeing an end of turn brainstorm here.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
I very much like this. This brainstorm is probably not going, especially if you're planning on doomsdaying next turn. This brainstorm isn't doing much anyway. Brainstorm very often in piles is being used in conjunction with other cards. You very rarely are going to be building a pile that relies on it in the face of a deafening silence.
Sure.
In truth, if doomsday resolves, we're probably incredibly likely to just see a cycler pile.
True, just because that gets completely around the Deafening Silence as well. I do also like Deafening Silence is a fantastic card, but it does allow Black Sky to still play on your turn and their own to be able to get more spells cast. So I think it's an actually a very smart move here, firing the brainstorm off. Might as well, right?
Yes, very much so. Gonna draw that card on top. And are we gonna see land Doomsday coming down here?
If we do, I still don't think there's a whole lot that Arn can do. Granted, we don't know what's in hand, but there's the Doomsday right there.
Here we go. And again, I think that we're predicting the cycler hand to be the primary way of doing this. There is no way to win on this turn at the moment with the way that
No.
this in the face of the deafening silence. Yeah, and here's the issue. You can go for a pile that wins exactly on this following turn, through basically just being a cycler line, or you can go with a slower pile that also has the ability to beat Torpor Orb by putting a Chain of Vapor in the pile.
Right.
And depending on basically depending on if you have cycler in hand, you can still do win on the following turn. but without it, it does need to be a 2-card pile for the most part in the face of this deafening silence. Note from one of our other matches, we have Marnie versus Malfi on the other side of the winner's bracket here, the upper bracket. They are tied 1-1
Wow.
and going into game 3.
Very cool. That is very cool to see. There's a lot of amazing players here today with some really awesome decks. Another deck that I rather enjoy is Madvine, which Malfi's list has been. Malfi has been procuring this list or been perfecting this list with the White Splash for quite some time. So I'm really excited to see that one here today as well.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about this, but one of the great things about this invitational is like it's a lot of work on our end, but the real pro of it is it's really just a celebration of the community. We
Oh
get to
yeah.
play some of the most active players on our Discord, some of the big faces are the ones who are here playing for us today. And we really get to put on a show for them, you know what I mean? Allow the
Hmm.
community to see these excellent players and get to enjoy this great legacy action.
Oh yeah, and that's just it. This is all a labor of love. This is all just pure passion on everybody's part. There's no flashy prizes. There's no, nothing out of the ordinary. It's just people that enjoy and love the game getting together and being able to celebrate that passion that they all share for this amazing community and the amazing format that is Legacy. So, really, all of everybody, no matter who comes out on top, the winners is the community itself because this is just it's all for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Black Sky immediately that pile still did not take long.
Uh See, there is still at least one main board duress of note. We see no ideas unbound. I
No.
don't see ideas unbound.
Um,
Very few cycle, or we see one street wraith.
one Street Wraith. I don't see any. I don't see any.
We don't see the chain of vapor, so we are expecting chain of vapor to be in hand. Or no, is that? I think I do see the chain of vapor.
Yeah. So
See,
it's actually
this is the hard part. It's like,
it
oh, I
is
see
the hard
a tiny
part.
corner of this blue card. This looks like it could be chain of vapor.
There's all four forces. There's a force of negation. So I don't think he's got much for anything of permission in hand. Interesting. It's really interesting. You are correct though. There is a Street Wraith that's there. So is there anything else? There's no baleful Strix. I don't see any Strix. Do you?
Yeah. There, I see two Strixes. There
Oh, do
is,
you? Okay.
yeah, there are at least two Strixes. This is
Okay.
one of the hard parts, and often turns into like I'm now asking you these questions of how many forces are in these piles. Do I see ideas
Yes.
in this pile? Do I see this? Because honestly, it's so much harder when you aren't actually the one leafing through the deck to know exactly what's happening. Um, I don't
There's
believe we
two.
see Cat Crystals either, so we might be trying to beat Blast.
There are two Strixes in Ideas Unbound and one Wraith and
And
Vapor. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. So what's this pile? This has got to be. I'm assuming this is just a slower pile.
yeah, one of the interesting things about Black Sky's list is he's actually lower on the cyclers in a lot of the lists, even the more turbo lists.
Aren't they
Um,
usually on 4?
Traditionally, we've played 6 for a very long time, and now
Okay.
we're down
Okay.
to, like, 4, 5 for the most part, like, 2 Street Wraith, 2 Edge of Bottoms. Edge of Bottoms just a better cycler in the face of Delver.
Yeah, he's
Um,
only on one edge about a main deck.
yeah,
Oh,
so
and yeah. Okay. All right. So there's another Street Wraith right there.
we did see, play Sylvan Library and attack for 1. Gets Black Sky Dock down from Doomsday Resolve to put him at 9, attacks into 8, and then we have the Street Wraith and Fetch, getting him down to 5.
Thassa's
That's
Oracle.
Oracle with 2 cards.
Is that just it? I don't
This
think there's. I don't think there's anything else that can be done.
there's no way that there's Blast. Very likely
Yep.
that he has Protection Spell in hand as well.
Wow.
And
Wow. Just like
that
that.
is the game, just like that. We were talking about just how hard this matchup is really on Arn's side of the table, on the green-white depth side. And Black Sky Dock putting on a clinic, showing us exactly why. Game 1 goes off turn 2, knows exactly what's in hand, so can go for the fast pile that loses through protection with the Lion's Eye Diamond line. And then in game
Right.
2, showing like you mull the 5 with a Deafening Silence, and that is A-okay for me, because really you only have one card that matters there, and I can beat it. And it shows really how it really matters seeing the conjunction of hate cards, right? The Wasteland with the Collector Oof, the Pyroblast with the Deafening Silence. Like the multiple pieces of interaction is really what you need because Doomsday can just beat the Singleton.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Big
Yeah.
congrats to Black Sky Dot for taking this down and going on to the finals of the upper bracket. And also big shout out to Arn. Arn winning that game 1 and going down to the lower bracket and will be facing the winner of the Amaru Fabrizio matchup. So either
Yes.
going up against blue-black ninjas or up against blue-black shadow.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do, we have a good amount of time on the clock, needless to
Oh
say.
yeah,
One of the
absolutely.
best matchups. Beyond Sadistic and I will be here talking a little bit while we try to get this next match lined up for everyone. But we will definitely be showing another match.
I'm
Um,
assuming we'll be jumping over to maybe the Marnie and the Malfi matchup, since that'll be what determines who actually plays on the top this next round.
Potentially, it is a little bit of an
Potentially.
issue that they were already in game 3 when we got to this game 2, and of course, that is a faster matchup as well, right? We
Ye-
have Marnie on the slower part of the plan, and Malfi really I am putting some root wallas in play, and I am swinging fairly quickly. So we'll have to see the way that that goes. I believe that is the only update that we have gotten so far. And actually, Amaru just took it down in 2 against Fabrizio. Big congrats to Fabrizio for coming to
Yo.
Fabrizio has been a huge grinder, playing in a month in many of our events, and is unfortunately out of this event. But big props for getting here. Like Corey was saying earlier, this is a huge celebration, and getting even to this event is a victory in and of itself. Big congrats to Fabrizio, one of our I believe Brazilian players, definitely South American. But Amru going on and will be going ahead and facing Arn in the next round in the bottom bracket. Uh, and actually, in the Tensai versus Mior matchup, the Jeskai control list that we were watching earlier versus 8cast, Tensai just took game 1 and they are just going into game 2.
Okay,
Looks like
interesting.
that might be the match that we go into. Of note, McDiff is going to be taking a little bit of time off of being our table spotter. Big thanks to McDiff again for doing
Oh
all the
yeah.
work and being down in the trenches, giving us updates on what's happening.
Mike
And
is Mike is always such a solid person that we can lean on for any role. So appreciate that.
And actually, if you really like those graphics that we have going in between rounds, the fun facts of our players, that's all Mike. So
That
big thanks to him for everything that he does for our Discord.
oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so we have Black Sky Doc going up to the top,
Yep.
facing up against Marnie and Malfi in this next one. We
Yep.
have know that Amaru is going to be facing up against Arn in the next round on the lower bracket. And then we have Tensai up a game over Mior in game 2. This is turning out to be pretty interesting. We have one of the blue black decks already dropping. 8cast is at risk of dropping as well. Um,
If you're Amaru and you're on ninjas, do you want to be going up against ACAS or do you want to be going up against Jeskai Control? Which one would you personally want to be going up against?
8cast is so scary to me because
Agreed.
it represents this ability to like this insane way to grind. Um, you have like you have some interaction for the Emery pile, but the thing about 8cast is it works on so many on different levels, right?
Hmm.
You're a chalice deck along with a giant stompy deck through the use of Kappa Cannoneer, and then you also have your ability to go like the long game grind with Sai and Emery and just draw multiple cards a turn. So I have to imagine that that's going to be a little bit of a harder matchup. But let's actually jump over to talking about Mior's deck list. We already saw Tensai. Tensai playing Jeskai controlled, very traditional Hot Wheels as we used to call it, right? Hull
Right.
Breacher Jason doing. And Mior is going to be going ahead and playing with is going to be playing 8cast for us today, which we were just talking about.
Right.
How do you like this post board configuration for 8cast?
Honestly, I have very little experience in terms with 8cast itself. However, I think the biggest thing that I'm really gonna be looking for is having permission. I th- I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I'm really looking for here. It basically gives me answers to be able to stop my Jeskai control player from being able to just daze doing me out of the game.
Yeah, I agree that I think that's the biggest risk. I think that with both, I think the onus is very much on Jeskai Control to be the one slowing down the game plan, right? The beatdown and the one who's gaining the advantage if there's very little interaction, of course, going to be 8cast. You have the
Right.
chalice to try to slow things down, and then you also have or to slow down your ability to sculpt. And you also have just like Emery doing value loops and Sai doing the exact same thing, along with Urza Saya just being an absolute threat that you have to be worried about.
Right.
Um,
I also think to note as well too that Chalice does a very good job against Jeskai control because it's able to hit. You're able to safely put it on 1 and 2 and to be able to shut down a lot of what Jeskai control really wants to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. There is Prismatic Ending, right? Prismatic Ending was this card that ended up bringing Chalice down a little bit in terms of the
True.
metagame, in terms of like actually having a real consistent answer for it game 1 and more consistent access to answers in game 2.
Right.
Um, However, needless to say, it still is just fantastic when it goes unchecked. The big issue for me are specifically the wheel combo, right? Where
Yes.
you
You
feel
have to be
advantage
able
in
to
the
stop
long
that.
game. Yeah, you feel advantage in the long game. You have the ability to beat down, but if specifically we have Narset and Hull Breacher denying draws off of the bobble, which takes off the Emery recursive draw line, um, and also threatens to just completely mind twist you while refilling on 7. That is that's the scariest part of this matchup. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we see Dismembers come in. However, that's a little weirder with this conversion configuration of the Hot Wheels deck with only 2 Hull Breachers. So potentially that's not something that we're going to see. Actually, the more I think about it, I guess I wouldn't really do that. But
Uh,
that to me is the scariest part of this deck. And both players keeping 7 with, I believe, Meteor on the play.
One thing to note as well, the fact that Tensai's only got one Supreme Verdict, it's going to have to be extremely well timed because 8cast's ability to put so many creatures to the battlefield so quickly can really hinder Tensai's ability to keep that under control. Having a lot of removal is perfectly fine, but you really want to be able, like Oliver, like you said, you really want to be able to save your prismatic endings for things like Chalice. You don't want to have to use them on creatures. You've got your Swords to Plowshares, but the last thing you want to do is Supreme Verdict, and within a turn or two, your 8cast player has already put enough lethal to the battlefield right back after that. So
Yeah. You do have a lot of cards out of Jeskai control, in fairness, when it comes to the sideboard games. You have access to 2 Meltdowns. You have the Pyroblast, which are great against Kappa Cannoneer on the stack. And
yep,
then against most of the cards, it's just Swords with Upsided, being able to also counter key Thoughtcast, Thought Monitors before they come down. Still kills Emery, still kills Sai. You also have access to a single Null Rod. Um,
that's true.
Null Rod is specifically great at shutting off the bobble draw line that we were talking about being one of the threats out of 8cast, specifically in game 1 configurations.
Hmm.
It looks like Meteor is passing back turn 2 without any subsequent play.
Interesting. Just plays out the just draws and passes. So this here you go right here. This is your Chalice eating it right here on possibly.
Yeah, that flexibility on Prismatic Ending, being able to shift his mana cost off of the X, and we see the Force Negation coming down to protect it.
Yeah. Which absolutely you want to keep that Chalice in play. I think for as long as you possibly can, to be totally honest.
Yeah, Thought Monitor doesn't actually respect coming in play for a good amount of time. It being a full 7 mana to cast, even with Affinity, means that would likely wouldn't be coming down for 4-3 more turns, depending on what you draw. So that seems like a fine card to pitch here.
Yeah, I do agree with that. So
We see
go ahead.
we see lands. We have to
Hmm.
assume that we have Psy or is this other Thought Monitor? One, two, three. Oh, okay. With the Lotus Petal trick. For those that don't know, the great thing with Lotus Petal and Affinity cards is you get to the way that it goes in declaring as you're casting a
Double
spell, you
count.
pocket the cost from Affinity before you actually pay the mana. So you get to have Lotus Petal in play, counting it towards Affinity, and then when you pay the actual mana for it, you then can sack the Lotus Petal. So in that
Yeah,
way, Lotus Petal is like 2 towards an Affinity card.
it's literally the best ancient tomb in the deck.
Man, I was incredibly wrong about how quickly it would take for a Thought Monitor to come down. Huh? That was just one turn with getting the Soul Land off the top. Again, I'm sorry, the artifact land that functions as the Soul Land for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and this just goes to show just how much mana that Miora has been able to develop here in just a matter of a couple of turns. It's pretty astonishing how fast 8cast is able to just go from a few measly artifacts to extremely threatening rather quickly.
Absolutely. We see third land coming down from Tensai, potentially a Teferi coming into play because we have the set
which
thing already.
which would be
Could also
fantastic, honestly.
could also just be Narset and going for an impulse.
That and Narset's ability to be able to shut off the extra draw from Mior is pretty big here, but I think Thought Monitor will probably just eat that.
Yeah, Thought Monitor will only be able to hit it to 1, denying the second impulse, but
Right.
we
Another
second
prismatic ending.
mana up. Oh, what is this fetch beforehand representing?
You know what? That's a really good question. Maybe a pyroblast? Oh no, he's only got white. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It just goes to, I guess, just trying to streamline things a little bit, expecting this PE to resolve and ponder for being able to be cast.
That makes sense too. But it goes to show also as Magic players, we really think about sequencing in that regard. Why did they do this? We always think of why a Magic player would do this. Why did my opponent do that? You have to take all of that into account when you're playing things like Legacy that's got such a huge, vast card pool.
Looks like that is a keep. There is no shuffle and just draws. Up to 5 cards in hand for Tensai, while Mior is down at 2 before getting his draw step here.
Yeah, that's actually pretty terrifying here. Urza Saga is a very good draw though. If that was what was on the top.
Yeah, incredibly likely that was either the card, one of the cards drawn off of Thought Monitor, since we had already had the land come into play for the turn. Or no,
Yeah.
I guess we have the island. Never mind. That was 2 turns ago. My apologies.
No, you're fine. I think this is an absolute banger of a card though that Mior really wants to have here. It's going to be the ability to not only be able to go and get another artifact, but is going to be able to put some pressure on the battlefield as well.
Yeah, very much is going to demand a meltdown in 2 subsequent turns from here. So I have a question regarding Chalice, because there's 2 types of Magic players out there. There's
Mm-hmm.
people that cast 1-drops into Chalice to check their opponent, and there are those that don't. Are you a Chalice checker?
I am not a chalice checker. I think chalice checking is a mind game, and I prefer to just beat down and let my creatures do the talking.
See, I may be one of the scum of the earth, where as soon as I'm at Comp Ariel, it's like, oh, we have some cards that are interacting right now. I'm going to cast Brainstorm in response and try to get this through the Chalice.
So now that's different though. That's different. Going when you're in a stack battle, that's a little bit different. But if you're just like, oh, we're sitting here, opponent's end step, I'm just going to cast Brainstorm and see if it resolves. And I wouldn't call it scum. I think that's just a poor lifestyle choice. So
Okay, all right, I can respect that. I have a very good friend who claims that the only way that you can Chalice check is you can't just like, I have priority, there's no other spells in the stack, and cast this 1-drop. That's not the way you do it. It's
yes,
always got to be in response to something. So your opponent's thinking about something else. Like
or
some interactions need to be happening. Somebody's going to combat something, and that's when you can try to do it.
it's when your opponent is trying to figure out an interaction. You can see what their eyes do. They look down at the battlefield and they look up, and that's immediately when you go, it's chalice check time, baby.
There we go. There we
Yep.
go. Urza Saga goes up to 2, so we'll be able to start making these constructs.
Yeah. And this is going to be, honestly, this is going to be a big deal because Tensai really, like you said earlier, Meltdown is more than, we know Meltdowns came in from the sideboard. There's 2 Meltdowns. So the fact that Affinity or 8-cast can really build up extremely quickly, but there's a lot on the battlefield that a Meltdown would be able to take down. It's pretty much, a Meltdown would absolutely hinder a lot of mana development here as well, too.
Oh, absolutely. This Narset also not being able to be hit down to 1 to prevent the second impulse by sorting that Thought Monitor is also just absolutely huge. So you still get to deny all the draw effects from Mior, but then
Yes.
also get this other impulse if you choose to. Just
Which means,
absolutely fantastic.
and builds even more value for your Meltdown to be able to do that, especially right after a construct comes down.
Rax coming in with the jokes about stifling Chalice on 1 triggers. Love it.
There
Absolutely.
you
Rax,
go.
great to see you today.
Yeah, absolutely.
EI. Well, I was talking about this earlier with Severin, eternally surprised, about
Mhm.
expressive iteration and control shells. Where there's 2 types of control players. They're the ones who claim expressive iteration is absolute garbage, and then there's the ones that say EI is the truth. Where do you fall on this?
Actually, in a really, really well-defined place, because if I'm casting expressive iteration, I'm getting a monk off of it. I'm totally cool with it.
Okay, all right, I can respect that. Yeah, Monastery Mentor makes EI pretty gosh darn good.
Yep, absolutely, because that gives me another spell to be able to cast off that, plus it gives me mana. I do agree with Severin that you are extremely punished if you don't see a land in your top 3, but the fact that I'm getting a monk off of it and I'm getting prowess triggers, it just gives me all the warm feels inside, so.
Oh no.
This is
Okay.
bad.
So we have Narset on 1 still in play. Finding the Days End doing. This is the combo, the thing that we were
Yes.
talking about being so afraid about. And
And a handful of cards.
you just slam this.
Absolutely. There's no
Or
question.
wait, hold on. Mior has 2 cards in hand, right?
Yes. Oh, I
Maybe
guess
you don't here.
I think you wait. Let him. There comes the construct.
You already have 6 cards in hand. Utilize your resources. Try to protect this Narset if you can, and then go ahead and cast the Days End doing later on.
Yeah,
Like this a lot more.
because I think the biggest thing is Urza Saga still produces quite a bit of a threat. So you want to basically allow Urza Saga to run its course, get off the battlefield. We already know that there's meltdowns in the deck. A meltdown would be absolutely terrifying. More than likely sitting on some removal here as well. That construct is not making it through the battlefield.
Well, let's see. We got the 6 cards in hand. Tentensai doing his patented, I will show you all 6 of my cards.
And I actually respect that a lot because that's actually the way that Tensai picks his cards up and looks at them, I actually think is almost intimidating. It's more like you always think that Tensai isn't sure where the cards are, but you know darn well that he knows exactly the order those cards are in. So it's almost like a little game that Tensai plays, like memory. You pick up the card. Oh, I made a match. Okay, I'm gonna cast this spell.
Where's my bomb card? I know I have an amazing one right here. Let's make you fear it as I look at all 3 of these.
Or all six of these because all six are absolute gas. Now what are you worried about? Which
Really
one do I cast?
really interestingly of note here, so the 2 Urza Sire lines that we see really common is in response to the Chapter 3 making another construct or just floating for mana. Me or choosing to go ahead and tap it for mana, potentially representing Kappa Cannoneer coming down.
Interesting. I actually thought as well, like Malfi said, Needle could have been an option there as well.
Needle on one of the planeswalkers potentially. You know that there's 2
Absolutely.
Berries, 2 Narsets potentially, and
And a
Jason.
Jace.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of these were cut, honestly. Wandering Emperor is not amazing in this matchup.
No, very true. Very true. I think the biggest thing, especially if we're going to get into a grind match, I would probably want to take out something like maybe be able to shut Jace down. But that's a lot of artifacts.
With Petal, this has to be Cannoneer, right? That's the only thing that seems to make sense to me off the top of my head, but I might be missing something.
I honestly, I agree with it's either draw more cards with another Thought Monitor or it's a Blastoise. I do agree. Snapcaster.
Snap Swords the construct potentially.
Yeah, I think that's solid.
And here we go. Why don't you gain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 life here?
That's a lot of life.
There's still
Yeah.
Prismatic in the graveyard for future Snapcasters.
And he's on 2, right? Yeah, 2. I love the fact that this Jeskai deck can be as competitive as it is. A lot of people have shied away from Jeskai. White has gotten quite a bit stronger over the last year and a half or so, and Red does a very very good job of being able to handle artifact based decks like this. But the fact that we still see Snap Swords is just it's such an awesome thing to see. You know what I mean? That combination of cards has been around for so long and just been an absolute staple in Legacy.
Yeah. Of note, this force is on the Snapcaster Mage and not on the swords. Then we see
Yeah.
a force engagement back.
And pitching to
Yeah.
Fairy, which is interesting.
I can respect this. Very much wanting to keep this Narset is willing to just spew cards from hand because expecting to do a Days Undoing refill if it gets to it.
Yeah. Has to stop this construct from being able to from getting through.
Of note, this was also a hard cast force rather than a pitch force, so this is where all the mana was spent.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, speaking of Jeskai, like after the the Dreadhorde, Arcanist, Arkham's Astrolabe, and was it Oko is the other one?
Yeah, oh yeah.
That trifecta ban. At that was the point where the Legacy community was up in arms, arguing about what the ban card should be, and there were so many people saying, "Oh, Uro. Why are we not banning Uro?" Uro makes every single control deck for the rest of the time an Uro deck. And that take has kind of aged incredibly poorly when you look at it. We have all these diverse arrays of control decks that kind of like next level up on each other. You have the rise of Grixis control again, which just absolutely eats Delver's lunch, but then gets kind of destroyed some of the time against other control decks if it isn't a him build. You have the dedicated Bant builds that everybody thought forever was going to be the only way to play control. And then you have these Jeskai control decks that are just like, I'm doing an A plus B combo. I am playing Splinter Twin, but it draws 7 cards instead. There's just so many ways that we get to play control now. Now, even with these no basic check pile control decks coming up, I'm very happy with where we're at with Legacy in terms of the wide array of control decks that are available to us.
And to quote a wise man, basics are for boomers. I think that's exactly how the quote goes, isn't it, Oliver?
That is exactly how the quote goes. Basics are for boomers. We say that. Let me tell you, I played check pile at my FNM last night, and I got wastelanded a lot. So that joke might not have aged too well.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But it's very valid, the fact of how aggressive these decks have gotten. You have Bant decks, which are completely the opposite. You've got this Jeskai deck as well, which is actually pretty, it's fairly basic heavy in terms of what it's doing, just so that it's as, safe against a Wasteland or a Blood Moon. It's also playing Blood Moon as well. But those check pile decks are so aggressive. But It really pushes your opponent. You have to have Wasteland. They have so many different ways to attack you. It's really ridiculous.
Of note here, which is really interestingly, that card that got shuffled away. So Days Undoing resolved. Mior had to
Mhm.
shuffle away the one card in hand and gets to draw one because the Narset Deny only allows
On
one.
the second.
The card that got put away was Pithing Needle, which also explains potentially why that wasn't an option and we got Lotus Petal instead. Because this Lotus Petal does feel like a strange search with how the rest of the hand lined up, right?
Yes.
But it turns out that Pithing Needle was in hand, which is just incredibly, incredibly unfortunate.
Yeah. I do agree. I really think Mior really needs to be in a really needs to be able to get something dominant going on here fairly quickly. Being able to keep the hull breacher off the battlefield, I think is a really good thing. All Mior really needs is something like an Urza Saga to be able to start turning things around. Something that quick can start rebuilding a board presence. But we still have not seen a single meltdown from Tensai, and that makes me very nervous as an ACAS player.
Yeah, and this game actually kind of displays one of the weaknesses of 8 cast, where you can do these incredibly powerful plans, whether it's the long game I'm drawing to, the insane fast Kappa Cannoneer draws, or the Stompy piles. But the
Mhm.
issue is that you have so many disparate pieces that kind of all work a little bit in tandem, but there's just so much air within the deck that there are these times that you just do not draw the powerful things, and instead you're sitting there with these like mediocre lands and like petals and opals with nothing to really do with them, unfortunately, if when your opponent's interaction is able to line up and make the entire just house of cards tumble down.
Right. I do agree. And that's one of that's the biggest downside to ACAS is some of your top decks are just extremely weak compared to what your opponent's drawing. When every single card they're drawing answers something you're doing in some sort of way or puts you in a far worse position. Um, if you drawing a bauble just feels really bad.
Yeah, when it isn't going along with any of the other loops to make it fantastic, it's just like, oh, I guess this is a redraw next turn.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the downside. But, you know, there are a lot of decks that have been played through the years that are very similar to this. You have those insanely good, you know, turn 1, 2, 3 sequence, you're dead. But if they aren't able to, you know, stop your game plan, you're just kind of like you kind of flounder there for a couple turns. And if you can't make it happen, your opponent absolutely will capitalize that and do it. We see that with Reanimator. You know, you very smart Reanimator players have always got that backup that they know that they're drawing to. Very weak Reanimator players put all their eggs in one basket and turn one die to a force of will, you know?
Yeah, that's very true. The House of Cards can come down for a lot of ways with the potential to draw things off the top. We see Tensai getting aggressive here and just goes for the Snap Brainstorm to double the amount of pressure, put Mior on a 4 turn clock here with just an absolute grip of cards.
Right.
Untapping with 7 cards and 7 mana up is just terrifying when you're off the top of your deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be even honest, that one sword's being able to eat that. Oh, there's a errata rune right there, or a null rod.
Oh, and this is terrifying. This prevents future baubles from drawing.
Yep, that is absolutely rough. That shuts off so much of Mior's draws right there.
Mior takes the 4 cards that are absolutely shut down by Null Rod, just puts them to the side. They count for artifact count, and that is just about it.
Right. Yeah, honestly, Mior would be almost at the end here if it wouldn't have been his swords that would have answered that construct. So
Oh, and just unfortunately, now on what turn 10 is the first time that we see a Sai or Emery come down, really the engine parts of this deck. Really
yeah,
unfortunate on Mior's side that like the really powerful aspects of the deck, the Emerys, the Sais, the Kappa Cannoneers, have just been no-shows throughout this entire game. And instead been doing like, I'm a stompy force of will deck. And no real pressure, unfortunately.
does null rod prevent improvise on Kappa Cannoneer? No, it does not.
No, it does not.
Yeah, so able to still be able to cast Blastoise through that as well. But I do agree the fact that this is the first powerful engine piece that we've seen out of Mior through this entire game, which has been many many turns, is just absolutely staggering. You know,
Seeing the swords come out on Sai, that's a heartbreaker.
it
No
really
mana
is.
to even do a sack some of these dead artifacts and do a draw and get a draw out of it.
Can't. Yeah, there's just no answer whatsoever.
Thinking hard. And there's confusion there about priority.
Okay.
New York still had priority after this the Psy resolve, so able to play the one Lotus Petal from hand to get a 1/1. And Swords not being able to put on stack until that trigger is there and priority is passed back to Tensai. So we at least get 1/1 out of this, but it technically blocks a Snapcaster Mage or can pressure this Narset to make your draws better, but you Tensai is sitting on so many cards now at this point. I can't imagine that this one won't even connect with the Narset if that's your line.
Even if it does and it takes Narset down, it would take an absolute. It would take a lot of cards for Mior to really be able to really be able to draw through that. A Thought Monitor would be fantastic, but I really think that getting rid of Narset is I think the last thing I want to do right now. I think I need to stem the bleeding and hope I draw something else off the top.
Yeah, the issue though is just that you are decked with that has so many draw effects built into it. You have your Thought Monitors, you have your Thought Cast, you have every single one of your Baubles. Baubles is of course already turned off because it's Null Rod, so I guess it doesn't matter. And I guess
Right.
it's really Thought Casts and Thought Monitors.
And that's kind of where I was going with that. The fact that Null Rod pretty much shuts off everything else. You need to stem the bleeding. But I think it goes. I think percentage wise, it's fair to go either way. The chance of that Thopter making it to Narset though are pretty slim. I feel like
We see Mior choosing not to block and not deal with either of these Snapcast mages coming in, looking like he is wanting to pressure this Narset then.
and there's an
EI. Man, EI when you got this much mana though. Oh, this is where it's just insane, the control decks, right?
Yep. Thing to note though, did not make a monk token.
Did not. Yes, you're right. Let's get this right. Not the best EI of all time.
We like what we like. I can't help it.
For those who don't know, Beyond Sadistic has his own rules on the Discord, and he actually has Monastery Mentor as his companion at all points in every single deck. Doesn't matter. He's playing Doomsday with no white. He still has Monastery Mentor as his companion. It's just something that we allow here at the MTGPL Discord. That's a joke. Be very clear, that is a joke.
Lotus Petal still allows you to cast it, so it works out well.
I guess that's true.
But Tensai did have a Flooded Strand off of the AI, so is not punished, is able to get the best out of the 3 cards and able to play a land. This is heartbreaking. There's the Urza Saga. There you go. That is a very good card. Is Thopter going to be able to make it through Tensai's 7 cards in hand? And there's a Hull Breacher.
Oh, you can't attack into this Narset now.
No.
There's no way that you can. Now this has to be back to block.
Yep. Yeah, it's got to be just stem the bleeding. I think that just puts the writing on the wall here for Mior, unfortunately.
It is interesting not to block on the previous turn and then not attack again, but I guess it was just like reanalysis of the situation, realizing that you can't do it.
Right.
Swing into the Narset.
And now there's a fresh Narset also. Yeah, that just makes it even worse.
Impulse again. We are looking for any removal spell off the top. Swords, PE, Meltdown. That's a PE.
Yep.
And that looks like that is the game.
That's unfortunate. That's such a crushing thing to watch, though. But this is why so many players play control decks. This is why so many players build their decks to be able to fight control decks. Being squeezed so aggressively by control decks once they've run you out of resources can be a real soul crushing feeling. But you know what? Every deck has got its own game plan. Every deck is there to do its own thing. You have to be ready to be able to, to grind with the best of them. And if you can't grind with a control deck is eventually just going to run you down, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's the unfortunate side.
Yeah, big props to Mior for making it to today's event.
Absolutely.
Mior has definitely put on the grind in our leagues to be able to get here today, and big congrats for making it this far. Honestly, it sucks to go out in this way, but you want to know what? It's just the way that it breaks sometimes. And getting to this event in and of itself is a victory. Big congrats to you, Mior.
Yeah.
Tensai taking it down, moving it forward. Going to be taking on the who won the Malfi Marnie matchup actually? Real quick, could someone tell us real quick who won that, just so we know who's about to be playing in this next one?
I'm assuming it was Malfi.
So if Malfi won, Marnie would be going ahead and facing up against Tensai in this next round, while Amaru takes on Arn in the lower bracket as well. But we have Doomsday going up against what we believe to be Malfi, but we'll check real quick while we get this. I'm sorry that we aren't quite sure who won the Malfi and Marnie match at this moment. We'll get that to y'all real quickly.
Yeah, it looks like it is actually Malfi. So it's going to be Malfi against Black Sky. So you're going to see Mad Vine up against Doomsday on the top, which is going to be that's going to be a really interesting matchup, to be totally honest. That the fact that Mad Vine does its own thing and plays by its own rules, while Doomsday is trying to basically go as fast as possible. But man, can Madvine dump a bunch of creatures on the battlefield and deal a ton of damage?
Ironically enough, we have one of our mods, PresBOTW, hates Burning Inquiry with a passion, and Malfi's
Mhm.
list goes against the traditional madness thing of not playing Burning Inquiry, where Burning Inquiry is strictly good against Doomsday. Like this is
Absolutely.
the game one where you absolutely want Burning Inquiry, but are missing it. But luckily, Malfi really being the four-color Madvine innovator and having access to Deafening Silence in the sideboard. So we'll have to see the way that goes. For me though, Oliver V, ya boy, and Beyond Sadistic, Corey down below us,
Mhm.
going to be it for us here in the booth with you today.
Yeah.
Big thanks to everybody for coming out. Big congrats to the players, and thank you for being such pinnacle parts of our communities. Um, Again, if you want to check us out, exclamation point Discord, jump in and get in on the good legacy action that we got going on in our Discord. This is a fantastic community and one of the best things to come into my life personally in the past 2 years. Beyond Sadistic, you got any words of wisdom for the folks before we get out of here?
You know what? All of you guys that are watching, if you're not part of the community, again, I urge you, come click the link, come sign up, hang out. It will be the best decision that your Magic career has ever made. There are so many amazing minds here that are on so many different decks that I have learned a myriad of things over the almost 3 years that I've been part of the Discord. So absolutely urge you, again, let us be your local meta. Come hang out with us. It's, there are casual events, there are more competitive events. We try to give so much to players to be able to play how they want to play and still have a good time. So we cannot wait to see all of you guys in the LFG channel, hunting down in the leagues, ready to take everybody down. So thank you guys so much for coming today. We appreciate that.
Thank you to all the watchers. Thank you all the players. And again, big thanks to all of the mods and staff in the background getting all this good work in.
Yeah.
Y'all, we'll be back in about 5 minutes. We'll be able to jump into this next round. This was the last match. We'll have two brand new fresh commentators in the booth for y'all.
Yeah.
As we said already, let us be your local meta.
Yeah.